how long will I be in hospital post-transplant? How do you answer a question like that, Pete?
Firstly, by saying it's highly variable. But if you look at the average patient would spend 2 to 3 days in the intensive care units after the transplant, and then 2 to 3 weeks after that in the hospital, recovering from the physical effects of the surgery, getting to learn how to take all their new medications that they need to, that we've just discussed in the last question. And it obviously there's quite an educational period so that we need to be sure that patients are confident in the time they leave hospital that they're able to comply with what's often quite a complex list of medications to take. But that's the average. Now, some people spend much longer in hospital. It depends a lot on what their physical condition is like at the time of the transplant. So we know that if you're frail, as we discussed earlier, you're going to spend longer in the intensive care unit and longer in the hospital, just recovering from what is major open heart surgery. So that's certainly one factor that will affect how long someone spends in hospital. Also, it depends to a large extent on how well the heart functions in the immediate post-transplant period. So some hearts are what we call stunned after the transplant, and so they may take 2 or 3 days to recover from the operation itself. And during that time, the recipient will basically remain on cardiopulmonary bypass. We call it ECMO in the intensive care unit, but it's basically a heart lung machine that keeps the body working while the heart's still recovering. And depending on how long it takes for the heart to recover, that will delay that person's recovery by that amount of time. So if they spend 2 or 3 days on the ECMO in the ICU, there'll be another at least 2 or 3 days and maybe longer before they're well enough to then leave the intensive care unit, and that will delay their discharge from hospital. So most people would leave hospital within 3 or 4 weeks of the transplant. We've had quite a few of our patients now. They're all assessed by a multidisciplinary rehab team, and if it's needed, we would then transfer them generally across the road to Sacred Heart Hospice, where we have a rehab ward, and they undergo a more intensive physical rehabilitation program with a fantastic group of doctors and physios and allied health people working over there. And they will, when they're happy that that person is safe, that they're not going to fall over when they leave the hospital and things like that, then they'll be discharged from that facility.
Yeah, it makes me appreciate that I was only in there for 2.5 weeks.
Yes.
I think 2 weeks is about the shortest, isn't it, Pete, that you can really do?
Yeah, I think, I don't know what the shortest, I think the shortest was about day 9 or day 10, and that person may have slipped out before we...
And out the back door. Yeah.
Yes.